We also have general notions of what is the ideal size for a family. Not that all people believe in the same family size, but that in general, United States society has some tendency to think that a certain size is best. Prior to the 1970s, more people thought families should be bigger rather than smaller. And we'll look at that in the next slide. Sociologists are also interested in tracking what levels of satisfaction partners have after the birth of a child. This chart from your text helps you see how the notion of the ideal family has changed over the years. There's a dramatic shift about 1970, with the ideal changing from 3 or more to 2 or less. Your text author believes this might be due to several factors: the development of safe and relatively easy and reliable birth control, meaning what's commonly referred to as the pill, combined with the women's movement and the sexual revolution, as well as changing views towards women entering the workplace. The actual composition of families has changed as well, with a much larger number of families in the 1970s having 4 or more children, and more families now have only 2 children. And the family continues to change. Technology has allowed us to, and of course this is at a cost, test the genetic makeup of children and select which embryos have the desired characteristics, if the parents so desire. Child rearing is a time-intensive endeavor, and with more families being dual earners, this means that parents have to juggle between childcare and work. Who's minding the kids may depend in part on how the family is structured. Working-class parents may need daycare, but low income creates a struggle to afford quality daycare. Nannies may be employed by higher-class families. There are concerns when parents become too involved with their children, always hovering over them to keep them safe, as known as helicopter parents. Another issue is how to get the children to their after-school activities when several children are across town or the parents cannot leave work. Uber is now becoming a transportation staple for many of these middle to upper-class families. Child care arrangements can vary. You can see here that if a woman is a single parent, then grandparents or other relatives are much more likely to provide care, and fathers are less likely. Daycare is becoming not only a way for parents to stay employed while they raise their children, but also is a socializing agent for children. While the nuclear family might be the most common form of family, it certainly is not the only type of family structure. As we review some of the vast diversity of United States families, it's important to note that we are not comparing any of them to the typical notion of the Kodak American family. There's no such thing. Rather, family life varies widely throughout the United States. In several contexts, we have seen how significant social class is in our lives, and its significance will continue to be evident as we examine diversity in United States families. Family structure varies, and some groups have certain patterns that are more common. We also see an emergence of different forms of families: one-parent families, couples with no children, blended families, and gay and lesbian families. I mentioned in the chapter on race that Asian American families tend more often to have both parents present, and you can see from this chart that this is the case. African American families are most likely to be headed by a single mother. Native American families are most likely of any group to be headed only by the father. This chart helps us see how the two-parent family has been in decline since the 1970s. understand that the divorce revolution occurred in the 1970s. This is because in 1969, California adopted a no-fault statute which allowed for divorce simply for irreconcilable differences, rather than the old standard of either adultery or emotional or physical abuse. California's law went into effect in 1970, and then, over time, all states adopted these kinds of laws. Thus, this created change over the next several decades, where divorce, and then single-parent families, became more commonplace and more socially acceptable. The trend now, too, is for more parents to have children without the formality of marriage, but to have some kind of commitment to rearing children together. Thus, single-parent families have gradually become more commonplace. This bar graph helps us think about who does not have children by both racial and economic status, and also by educational attainment. Asian Americans and whites are about equally as likely to not have children. Not surprisingly, the higher an education one has, the less likely one is to have children. This correlation may have to do with professional choices and deciding that education and career take priority over raising a family.